another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and we are going to continue on with this talk about correlatives and words that, when you say them, actually do reference what you're thinking about or what correlates to them. Okay, this is a really good exercise in precision with language, if anything. So if you take anything away from this, just these few lessons on this topic, if that's all you want to spend on them, will be enough to help you appreciate the ceiling that we can reach when it comes to precision with language, and also the standards that are expected when one goes out of their way to be precise. All right, so this might be helpful in that way. So let us continue. So we've looked at the rudder. Estigar. Are we up to here? Yeah. Estigar. For it is estigar ploya or hon ug esti pedalia. Right? So boats and rudders. Right? Boats and rudders. Do they correlate? No, they don't correlate. There are boats that are ruddered, but there are boats that are not ruddered. All right? All rudders, or at least at this time, when this was written, are associated with boats, but not all boats are associated with rudders. So diuk antistrefai does not correlate. Okay, togar ployon legetai pedaliu ployon. Now this is an interesting play on words that he said. Well, it's not play on words, but a little bit of a rhetorical tool that is used here. So it's not said, for it is not said that the rudder, the rudder boat of the rudder, like so, toga ployon, so boat, legetai, pedalio. The boat is not said of the rudder. I don't want to write that out because it doesn't even help it anyway. But think about what he's saying here. You don't say the boat of the rudder. You do say the rudder of the boat. All right, let that sink in just a little bit because it's important. You don't say the boat of the rudder, but you do say the rudder of the boat. We're going to look at more examples of this, but see if you can sense something with what he's saying. If you do understand what he's saying, awesome. You don't have to be able to articulate what he's trying to get at, but as long as you just sort of understand what he's trying to indicate, that's important. Togar ployon legatai pedaliu ployon. Right? Allo isos oi kaio terra an he apodosis ae. Right? So what's he but it is, more fitting, more proper if someone should render an account or say I huto pos apodothai to pedalion pedaliotu, the rudder of the ruddered. It is more fitting, is more proper. See how we've got winged here? To say the rudder of the ruddered. The ruddered of the rudder. Look, I might even try to type this out. Is that typing? Yeah. The rudder of the ruddered. Ridded. Oh, ruddered. Right. So get rid of that one. Perfect. So this makes more sense. These two correlate. The rudder, all right, it implies that it is speaking about something that has a rudder. And what has a rudder? You can make a word, onomatopoeia, right? And say a ruddered thing, okay? Everything that is ruddered has a rudder. Everything that is winged has a wing. Everything that is, every time you say the wing, you're talking about the wing of something that has wings. Every time you say the rudder, you're talking about the rudder of something that is ruddered. You see how these two examples here correlate? All right, without further ado, I can get carried away with that sort of stuff. now and then. And he apodosis. Here we go. Onomagaru kaitai. Right? So sometimes there is not a word lying about. There's no word at hand or disposable. And that's why he mentions onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. To make names. Again, onoma meaning names. Poiein meaning to make. Kai antistrephaige. Ge, if you want to learn the Greek, ge is like a particle. It can add force to a word. And actually, Australian English, where I come from in Australia, has this particle. We don't say ge, but we say but. Like that conjunction. Right, so let me, that conjunction, but we say ge, this but the same way as he says ge, okay? In specifically, it's a New South Wales sort of thing, but even more specifically, it's the hotbed of this is in my area of Sydney. Okay, we say but, we put it at the end of a sentence. So some people say it is what it is, but someone from my area will say it is what it is, but yeah, but or they'll say, yeah, I'll go tomorrow, but like it's this force word in Greek. Sometimes it can be placed there and it adds a flavor to what you're saying. It adds a tone, it adds a suggestion. So in this sentence here, kai antistrephai, correlations and correlations ge, which is like this word is highlighting the importance of correlating. Okay, it doesn't have one particular definition. It just, the more and more you study Greek and the more you speak it aloud, the more ge makes sense and adds flavor and tone. If you want to know more about particles, there is a book, The Greek Particles by Deniston, I think, who wrote it. Excellent book. Haven't read it myself. I've only flipped through it a few times. Got it recently. But it is brilliant. So if you're learning this language and you want to learn about these particles, that book is outstanding. Greek Particles by Deniston. Anyway, let's continue on. Iano kaios apodothe, right? It should be rendered fittingly. Togar pedelioton, right? The ruddered, for the ruddered, to the rudder, or by the ruddered, is the ruddered thing. Posautos dekai epiton alon hoyon he kephale, right? So he's mentioning the head. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Let me go highlighter. The head. Where is it? He kephale. So what does head correlate to? What does head correlate to? You might say animal. Animal, it correlates to animal, and that's pretty good guess. All right. Animal and head. Right. But he's going to make an observation in a second that not all animals have heads. Okay, and that might sound strange. We sort of see the top of any animal and we think that's its head. But he's got a point. It's not really a head. Like if you think of skull, brain, eyes, all that constituting a head, there are a lot of things that don't have like a skull, eyes, and all that, which fits that criteria. So he says some animals don't have a head. And for example, like a jellyfish or a Portuguese man of war, maybe even a sea cucumber, and things like that, they don't really have heads to speak of. Worms, I guess you could say, don't really have heads either, unless you've got a really broad definition of head that other people don't agree to. So they don't correlate. Alright, so he's going to address that problem now as well. Epiton alon hoyon he kephale oi kaioteros an apodothai kephalo tu, right? And it would be more fitting, it'd be more proper if someone should render an account of the headed, okay, the headed, right, rather than the animal, okay, the headed, all right, so he's made a word here, kefalotu, apo didomene, rather than animal being rendered, ugar e zdoyon, right, for it is not the case that an animal has a head, kefalein kai. Polagarton zdoyon kefalein ukachai. Many animals do not have a head. Huto de praista anisos tis laboi huisme kaitai onomata. Right? For there are some names, some things that are named that are not lying around, me kaitai. And so you need to make, in this way, you need to you need to speak a word that captures that. And kefalotu, right? I don't think I've ever come across the headed before when reading Greek. This might be the only case of it. And he's made a word, onomatopoeia. Why? For what sake? Because he's trying to be as precise as possible. And that's a sort of motif for this section. Ia poton proton kai tois pros auta antistrefusi. Right? So, it keeps going. Tithae ta onomata. Right? So we want to place words, the names, it should be placed, that correlate to the same thing. If you're thinking to yourself, is he speaking English by translating the sentence backwards? Yes. Okay, because Attic Greek, especially the Attic Greek in this text, is just out of this world. His style here is not prose at all, nor is it narrative. It's like lecture notes. It is a study guide. It is a course curriculum thing that he's written down for himself to present to other people. It's like his brain works this way in his free, no word order Attic Greek, and we have to decipher it. And sometimes reading it backwards is just as helpful as reading it left to right. Okay, so as he's saying, we need to give words. We should place words, names specifically, that correlate. Hosperepiton proiai reimenon. So those things said before. Apo tu petoru to petoron. So just exactly like we gave the example of the wing of the winged. Okay, these names correlate. Kaiapo tu pedeliu to pedelioton. Right, so the rudder of the ruddered. Do I still have that? Yeah, the rudder of the ruddered. Pantaun ta prosti. Right, so therefore, all of the relations, ian per okaios apodidotai, if they should be given fittingly, if they should be rendered fittingly, pros antistrefonta legatai, they should correlate. They're said to correlate. If you give a word fittingly, they said to correlate. Just like all the examples that he gave there. Epaiange prosto. There's ge as well. Again. Epaiange prosto tukon abo didotai. By chance. To tukon. This is a word that's going to pop up a lot. So if you're learning the Greek, this is a good one to learn now. To tukon. Haphazard, chance, random. Can mean a few different things. Luck as well, of course. Get prosto tukon apodidotai. So sometimes just by luck, you say a word that sort of correlates with another word. Kaime pros auto ho legatai u kantistrefai. But, and sometimes the same thing does not correlate. Okay? We've covered this quite thoroughly. Lego de hotiude ton homologumenos, right? And I speak now, right? I'm speaking now that which homologumenos. That's a strange one to translate into English. It's like preaching, confessing, admitting, pros antistrephonta legomenon, right? He's speaking specifically about things that are said to correlate. Okay, kai onomaton autois kai menon. So names to themselves are lying about. Uden antistrephai iam prostiton sumbebe keet sumbebe goton. All right, sumbebe goton. Here it is. He's been building this huge sentence up for this part. I'm going to leave it for the next lesson, but what he's saying, unless you have a word lying about that relates to the same kind of accident. Now that's for the next lesson. All right, so he's saying, okay, cool. You've got these words that relate to each other, but why is it that they work? Why is it that they relate to each other? Why is it that we feel that sometimes words aren't laying about for us to use, to pick up and use, to name this relation, to show this relationship between things? And it can be the case that it's not a part of the same category of accidents. So we'll have an exploration of that in the next lesson. There's a lot here, a lot of Greek. I'm just trying to get through it, as you can tell, because there's so much here of the same idea. I don't want to stop on every single sentence, because even though I do personally enjoy this stuff, I know that there are some people who are probably less enthusiastic about correlations and accurate words. So in a spirit of charity, I'm going to try and prevent myself from going on too long about all these things. I'm going to return to this part though. I'm going to start the next lesson here, okay? And I'm going to go all the way down to, where is this? Is it here? I'm going to go all the way here. So this is our next lesson, and we're going to have a look at this. And after that, there's only a little bit to go. So one takeaway, I know this is pedantic, and like I said last time, I'd like to give some food for thought. The motif here is making words for relationships. Christians are exceptionally talented in this regard, making words for relationships. For example, if you listen to the Nicene Creed, you're going to hear the word consubstantial, homoousion, right? Homoousion was created by the church fathers and some of the early church doctors to explain how Jesus of Nazareth can be the same substance as his father, right? The creation of names to show relationships. Christians, I think, take the cake in this. Like, obviously I don't know everything about all religions, but just from my own personal experience, the deeper you get into any sort of Christian theology, just the more frequently you experience all these words that are artificial, not in a bad sense, of course, but literally made by artifice, made by art. If there is not a word that fits the bill, Christian theologians don't hesitate. They don't and ah. They don't ask for permission. They go out and forge a new word. They're often very beautiful words, either rooted in Greek, usually rooted in Greek, or sometimes rooted in Latin. Both of them absolutely beautiful. The German theologians do the same thing in German with their Germanic side of their language, which is stunning as well. They have these long compound words where they mash whole lots of things together, and it's quite cool. It's strong. It's a masculine sort of language, German in the end of the day. And so what I'm trying to say is, what we're learning here is what people did to construct their faith. So the largest faith on the planet right now by population is the Christian religion at the time of recording this. Who knows if something has changed that in the far future. But this religion, which has its own different sects and denominations, has a rich history of doing exactly what we just read there. Alright, onomatopoeia in the same way, especially when it comes down to this idea that we reached at the end of this lesson, sum bebe goton, of the relating to the proper accident. So I'll leave that there for now. It's been another long episode, I think, and we've gone through a lot. There's a rich intellectual history about what we're doing, and why is that the case? It's because logicians, theologians, and philosophers understand that it's entirely necessary that this skill be used. I'm going to repeat that again. This skill is entirely necessary in theology, philosophy, and logic, or rhetoric. All right, why? Because it's not good enough that you say a word that isn't as precise or as accurate as needed, especially in very important situations and subjects such as a faith, okay, such as a theology. Right, so that is where this rich intellectual history comes about, and it's also by new discovery. A person will come across an idea that hasn't been communicated before, and they'll realize that their current language, their current vocabulary isn't sufficient, up to par. So they do this. They create a word that correlates perfectly to what they're talking about. Or just a word that identifies something's essence and nothing else. Right? We looked at that in chapter 1. So if you want more on what I just said then, chapter 1 is where I would refer to. Yeah. So if you want further examples, everyday examples, you want historical examples, that's all of that is in the book, but I try to keep it to art and, basic sort of friendly, uncomplicated language here. So hope you've enjoyed. As always, si semper fortis in opere tuo. Now see you next time.